Hi everyone, happy First Chapter Friday. Today I will be reading the first bits of Unbirthday by Liz Braswell, and this is part of a series called A Twisted Tale, where they basically take a Disney story and twist it so that it ends a little bit differently, or rather begins a little bit differently too. So this Unbirthday one is based on Alice in Wonderland. It says, "What if Wonderland was in peril and Alice was very, very late?" Okay. There's lots and lots of books in this series. So I also really, really like the Little Mermaid one too. That one's really great. So let's get to it. Again, this is called Unbirthday in the Twisted Tale series. A gentle note, dear reader. As you are probably already aware, this book is a work of nonsense. That being said, it behooves us to remind you that the Mad Hatter is a fictional character and doesn't conform to the strict rules of our own world. To wit, mercury is deadly poisonous. Hatters really were said to have gone mad in the 19th century because of exposure to mercury in their hat-making processes. In effect, they suffered long-term mercury poisoning. You cannot eat the fish from many rivers and lakes of America even today because of the deadly mercury that lies on their muddy bottoms eternally, the result of toxic industrial pollution. In this book, the Hatter drinks mercury. You, dear reader, cannot. It will kill you. L. Braswell. Alice as You Remember Her, Chapter 1. Morning sunlight waved a cheery hello on the papered walls of an equally cheery bedroom. It had rained overnight, a proper rain, hard with big droplets, and the day came fresh scrubbed and eager. The air that drifted through the open window was chill and sharp and had a bit of a kick to it. A flock of little sparrows who had been nestmates barely a week earlier chirped excitedly back and forth in a way that would eventually result in either a sudden flight en masse or feathery fisticuffs. Even the hammer strikes of Mrs. Anderby's solid heels against the floor downstairs sounded springier and more energetic than usual. The girl lying so peacefully in her brass-framed bed, thick golden hair spread around her head and neck like the resplendent halo of an angel, was coaxed from sleep to wake at once by the abundance of all these cheerful noises. Her eyes snapped open, the long lashes of her lids waving like wheat with the suddenness of the motion. "Today," Alice declared, "is a perfect day for adventure." She grinned and basked in the glory of her decision for a moment, then shot out of bed. Dinah, a cat both grumpy and unwilling to see the day for what it was, stretched once in place, where formerly her mistress's warm feet had been, then closed one elderly eye to the day, and was asleep again seconds later. "Sorry, old girl," Alice said, giving her a kiss. "But tempus fugit, you know. Time waits for no one." Of course, this being the time and place that it was, adventurers couldn't just run out the door in their chemises. It would be scandalous. And so Alice began the tedious process of donning all the layers necessary to going out into the world as a respectable young English lady. She had drawers that went down to her knees, a crinoline that looked like a cross between a bee-scap and a cage. It was basically a series of steel hoops in diminishing circumference that circled her lower body from her calves to her waist. This held the skirts worn on top of it out from around her like a giant bell, with her legs the clapper. Corset! She didn't tight-lace, despite the fashion and the pressure from friends. On this one thing Alice and her sister agreed: it was pure foolishness. Her waist was fine as it was, thank you very much, and she left the corset to its main job, keeping her back aligned and her womanly attributes smooth and in place. Petticoat, petticoat, actual dress, a nice summer-weight gingham in blue and white, jacket and hat, and finally, camera bag. Alice hurried through all of this as fast as she could, and then nearly skipped like a girl much younger than 18 as she ran down the stairs, only remembering to try to keep her footsteps silent at the very last and far too late minute. "Alice!" a strident female voice cried out. Matilda, her sister, of course. Well, since she had been heard, she might as well have some breakfast. "Good morning, mother, father, sister," she said grandly, sweeping into the dining room. Her family was gathered at one end of the long table like refined squirrels, cracking soft-boiled eggs, spreading jam on toast, sipping tea and coffee, and generally looking completely at ease in the formal and bric-a-brac-filled room. Her mother turned a plump, still pink cheek for a kiss, and Alice obliged. Her father's face was mostly hidden behind the newspaper, but she managed to get a quick peck, not quite on his mutton chop. She patted her sister on the shoulder dismissively, as if brushing off some dandruff. "Married yet?" her father asked from behind the paper. "No, Papa." "In the stocks yet?" "No, Papa." Good." He shook his paper to facilitate the turning of a page, and then continued reading about things happening in foreign places. His favorite type of story. "Are you sure it's good, Papa?" Matilda asked. She was severe, beautiful in a slightly off-putting way, dark eyes and lashes and hair where her younger sisters were light. Her somber dress was as drab as Alice's blue and white one was gay and summery. But if they had ever really made an effort to go out together, and if Matilda ever made an effort with her appearance beyond brushing her hair, they could have owned all of the town of Kexford. Not that Alice wanted to own Kexford, but it would have been an absolute ghast for one party at least. "She's 18, you know," Matilda prodded, spreading jam on her toast most seriously. "And I believe you're 26, her mother observed. "I have prospects." Yes, you do," her mother said quickly and soothingly. "I'll keep my baby girl Alice for as long as I possibly can," her father said from behind his paper. "Don't go interfering with that." "My dear friend, Mr. Hedgetruth has a friend, Richard Connie," Matilda said, turning to Alice and ignoring her parents. "I believe I've told you about him, and a number of times. I think you may even have met him once. Very bright young man, handsome, with a great future before him. He's already working on Gilbert Ramsbottom's election campaign. I have invited him." "Oh, sounds lovely. Yes, thoroughly interesting. Fantastic. Do keep me informed of his doings. Absolutely. Good morning and goodbye." Alice winked at her mother, who tried very hard not to smile. Then she grinned and spun away, and it wasn't until Matilda turned back to her breakfast with a huff that she noticed her carefully buttered and jam toast was missing. Walking down the sunny road, Alice thoroughly enjoyed her purloined breakfast, so expertly buttered and jammed. After wiping her lips and her cheeks in the back of her hand like a cat, she raised her face to the sun, enjoying its warmth as it hit her skin. For only a moment, of course, before it did any real damage. She adjusted her hat and, oh dear, she had forgotten her gloves. "Oh, my fur and whiskers," she sighed. "Not respectable at all today." A momentary feeling overcame her. It wasn't sadness, exactly, but it wasn't just nostalgia either. There was a golden drop of happiness in the feeling, whatever it was, as warming and delightful as sunlight, a memory of old dreams that had worn thin like the comfiest pillowcase one couldn't bear to throw out. Wonderland. The details had dimmed long ago, but the feelings remained. Adventure, magic, fascinating creatures. True, not all her imagined adventures in Wonderland had been fun or safe, and not all the people had been particularly nice or polite. Some of the flowers in Wonderland were downright violent, and the Queen of Hearts, she had wanted Alice dead. "Off with her head!" The phrase still sent shivers down Alice's spine. But she hadn't had another dream like that one since. "Stuff and nonsense," Alice declared, shaking her head. "It's a gorgeous day. Let's go find the magic right here." Right here was, of course, Kexford, a shining little town of university professors, ancient halls, glorious green parks, and glittering canals. There were gleaming white walkways, ancient stone buildings, and gardens so tiny and bright they practically sparkled like jewels. Everything was ordered and perfect and old in these hallowed grounds, even down to the properly robbed students hurrying to class after late-night partying and discussing Petrarch. Alice's house was just north of the university area, a fine, large place with gardens and a lawn. Not too long a walk to where the action was downtown, but not close enough to hear "Good day, Miss Igiture" being belted out at 3 o'clock in the morning. After waking from that magical dream ages ago, little Alice had devoted all her free time to searching the town for anything that reminded her of Wonderland. No place was safe from her explorations. Every bell tower she could sneak into, every alleyway she could slip down when her parents' backs were turned. Top to bottom, high and low, nary a stone unturned. Mostly low, rabbit holes and mushrooms, tiny caterpillars and large spider webs, dumb waiters and surprisingly small doors in other people's houses she really ought not to have explored and opened. Her wooden treasure box had contained rather more than the usual number of strange trinkets children tend to collect: tiny brass keys, tiny glass bottles, leftover halves of unusual biscuits, a right off white glove, scraps of paper with the words "Eat me" and "Drink me" laboriously written over and over again as she tried to match her flourishes to memory. Alice hadn't been a morose girl, far from it, but she wondered sometimes if the reasons she never again dreamed of Wonderland were just a little bit her fault. "Of all the silly nonsense, this is the stupidest tea party I've ever been to in all my life. Well, I've had enough nonsense. I'm going home, straight home. Oh, no, please, no more nonsense. No more nonsense." There, she had said it herself, and her subconscious had obliged and kept her nightly excursions to a world with little nonsense in it at all. So Alice had tried her hand at drawing the few things she remembered clearly from her dream: the Cheshire cat, the white rabbit, a pretty little golden key, or the curious things she saw while she was out exploring: a student with surprisingly pointed ears, an interesting clump of moss, part of a stone wall with vines that looked like they could be pushed aside to reveal a hidden entrance to somewhere fantastic. Her father had said, looking over her sketches. "We don't have much artistic ability in my side of the family either," her mother had commented. "She does notice many obscure things, even if she can't reproduce them." Yes, she spends quite a bit of her spare time noticing things. Perhaps she needs some sort of focus for that. Besides drawing, I mean. And that was where Aunt Vivian had come in. She couldn't draw either, but she could sculpt a fair piece, host literary salons, was occasionally involved in rather scandalous doings, and wore trousers like a coal-hauling pit lass. Her house was running over with fringed lamps, art made by her friends, incense burners, and velvet. She was not married. In fact, she was just about everything a family could hope for in a black sheep. And she helped her brother and his wife, and their daughter, by fulfilling that role perfectly. She bought her niece a camera. One of the latest models, a Phoebus box camera. It was a beautiful little thing and extremely portable, requiring neither a tripod nor bellows. It fit very nicely into a medium-sized case and could be brought out to quickly capture whatever took Alice's fancy, provided the light was bright enough. Aunt Vivian already had a dark room sufficient for developing its glass plates. She was famous for the costume tableaus she took at her salons with a much more traditional and giant-sized portrait camera. Alice was delighted. There was something inherently wonderlandy about the whole process. Light and shadow and mirrors and glass and lenses and images appearing magically. A side effect of the new hobby was spending a lot more time with her aunt, which relieved her parents, who were concerned about her wandering the streets of Kexford by herself, and worried her sister, who believed Aunt Vivian was a terrible influence, not so much modern as profligate. Matilda need not have been over-concerned, however. Alice loved her aunt, but she was now 18 and had her own agenda, which had nothing to do with artists or vermouth or poppies or trousers. Alice, of course, used the camera to document anything the remotest bit mysterious. She spent her days on what she called photo walks, looking for objects and people that hinted at hidden fae or wild side, which she could try to coax out with her camera. Once she found a potential subject, she worked long and hard composing the shot, sometimes with additional mirrors or a lantern if it was in a dimly lit alley. She developed these images in her aunt's dark room